Good evening, folks at home and around the world, and welcome to another edition of the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper, and I strongly suggest that you have pen and paper by your side all during this episode of the Hour of the Time, for I'm going to be giving you a complete bibliography. You see, folks, I own a library that is better than most city libraries in this country, and I'm going to give you the names, authors, and publishing companies of the books that will start you off to bring you up to speed to where I am at. And you're just going to get what you need to get you to a beginning level tonight. I suggest, if you can, that you tape record this episode of the Hour of the Time so that you can play the tape back and refer to it. If you do not have the facilities to do this, you may order a studio quality stereo tape done on a digital mixer from Stan Barrington. I'll give you his phone number so you can call him and talk to him about this later. I'll also give you the address. And for those of you who want to know the price right off the bat, for CAGI members, it's $7.50, and that includes postage and handling per tape. For everyone else, it's $17.50, and that also includes postage and handling. Okay? Okay, folks, the first thing in the bibliography that you need to get started, I'm going to recommend to you is a book. This is a thick book. The title of it is Our Ageless Constitution. Our Ageless Constitution. Now, I'm not going to say these things slow. I'm going to repeat everything twice, but I'm going to keep on going because I've got a lot of information to give you. Either make a tape of this broadcast or order the tape, or if you can, write fast and get the information down, but get it, because you need to read these books. You need them for your personal library. You need them to know what's going on in the world and who's bringing it about. Our Ageless Constitution, edited by W. David Stedman, S-T-E-D-M-A-N, and Lavon G. Lewis. It's part of the Stedman Liberty Library, published by W. David Stedman Associates. Now, I don't know where you can order this book from, folks. I got it, as I always get my books, from used bookstores, from people who find something and send it to me, from scrounging in thrift shops, from new bookstores. I have a library that's unbelievable. Most of you would be awed by the books that I have. Most of my income throughout the years has gone toward stocking this library, simply because I learned a long time ago that the sum total of all man's knowledge is contained in books, but you have to root it out. Not all books are true. Not all books tell the truth. Not all books are all lies. It's sort of a mixture, but you have to have the information available to do the research and come up with the answers. Okay, now once you've got that book, you have everything you need to know about the history, the ideals, the purpose, everything behind the founding of this country. And if you don't know that, you don't know anything about this country. So you need it. The next book that I'm going to recommend, because you need to know the symbology and the history and who these people really are, is a book that was originally printed in the 1700s. In fact, the beginning... it's called the Templar's Chart, the Masonic Chart, the Templar Chart, and the beginning has a letter to the editors of the New York Express, and it's signed by Benjamin Franklin. It's a very old book. It has the complete history, according to Freemasonry, of Freemasonry. It's entitled, and this is the title of the book, The True Masonic Chart, or Hieroglyphic Monitor, containing all the emblems explained in the degrees of entered apprentice, fellow craft, master mason, mark master, pass master, most excellent master, royal ark, royal master, and select master. Designed and duly arranged, agreeably to the lecturers by R.W. Jeremy L. Cross, G.L., to which are added illustrations, charges, songs, etc., with additions and emendations. Also, a complete history of Freemasonry by a brother. This copy that I have is the 12th and stereotype edition, printed in New York, published by A.S. Barnes and Company, 51 John Street, in 1854. You can find treasures like this if you look. Most people, though, sit back and say, oh, I don't know where to find that. I don't know anything about doing research. Why don't you tell me? That's not the way to do it, folks. Not the way to do it. The second book I'm going to recommend here that you get is a book by Joseph Campbell, probably the world's foremost authority on myth and mythology. This book is entitled Primitive Mythology, The Masks of God. Again, it's by Joseph Campbell, Primitive Mythology, The Masks of God. And I believe it's printed by Penguin Books. Okay. Next one is also by Joseph Campbell, Occidental Mythology, The Masks of God. It's by Joseph Campbell, entitled Occidental Mythology, The Masks of God. Also published by Penguin Books. Now, I've got all these books stacked up around here, so if you hear a moment of silence, it's because I'm reaching for something. I literally have surrounded myself with stacks of books. I'm going to give you the title, author, and publisher of as many as I can, starting with the most important for you to use to get started with and working on down. Next one is by Joseph Campbell again. The title is Creative Mythology, The Masks of God. Creative Mythology, The Masks of God, also by Joseph Campbell and published by Penguin Books. The next one, folks, is The Sacred and the Profane. The title is The Sacred and the Profane. The subtitle is The Nature of Religion, the Significance of Religious Myth, Symbolism, and Ritual Within Life and Culture. And it's by Mircea Eliade. Mircea Eliade. It's actually translated from a foreign language. It's printed by Harcourt Brace Jovanovich. Harcourt Brace Jovanovich. Next one is an important book. Once you get into the symbology of the mystery schools and the occult, you learn that geometry and Hermetic science become very important. Now, this book is entitled Occult Geometry and Hermetic Science of Motion and Number. Occult Geometry and Hermetic Science of Motion and Number, a combined edition by A.S. Riley. A.S. Riley. And this is published by Divorce Publications. That's spelled D-E-V as in Victor, O-R-S-S. And there's some treasures in these books. Now, these are books that most people pass by. They look at them and say, oh, this is boring, or I would never learn anything from that. And most people would never even pick up one of these books. But I'm telling you, folks, you better start. Next one is entitled Celestial Symbols. Celestial Symbols. Symbolism in Doctrine, Religious Traditions, and Temple Architecture by Alan H. Barber. Alan H. Barber. And this is published by Horizon Publishers. Sometimes you get to understand that even the names of the publishers and sometimes the name of the authors are symbolic. Horizon, as you've already learned, means Horus rising. Horizon Publishers and Distributors Incorporated, P.O. Box 490, Bountiful, Utah. And that book contains some revelations. Another one is entitled Many Moons. Many Moons. The Myth and Magic, Fact and Fantasy of Our Nearest Heavenly Body by Diana Bruton. Introduction by Colonel James Irwin of the Apollo 11 mission. Oh yes, gets very interesting. Very interesting. And this is published by Prentice Hall Press, New York, London, Toronto, Sydney, Tokyo, Singapore, so I know you can find this book. Now, we're going to get into some other areas now, and I'm going to attempt to sort of explain to you some of the things that are in these books. And you need to start with some history. The first book that I want to recommend to you is entitled Holy Blood, Holy Grail by Bijant, Lincoln, and Lee. Bijant, Lincoln, and Lee. Holy Blood, Holy Grail. The next one is the Messianic Legacy. The Messianic Legacy by the same authors, Bijant, Lincoln, and Lee. And then there's another one called The Temple and the Lodge. The Temple and the Lodge by the same authors. And then the fourth one by these authors also is called The Dead Sea Scrolls Deception. The Dead Sea Scrolls Deception by the same authors. Now read those books, read them in that order. The last one just came out. I've just ordered it myself, have not read it, but I know because I've read the other three that I need to read it, and it's going to be just as revealing as the first three. Now, none of these books put together the whole picture. I've done that. But they all have pieces to the puzzle that you need to find for yourself so that you'll know that I'm not leading you down the garden path. That's important. Now, in that series of books, folks, it outlines the history as they have discovered it of a secret society whose sole purpose is to protect the bloodline of the family which traditionally throughout history has claimed the divine right to rule the rest of us. It's important that you know about that family because the same people also rule this country, folks. They're all related. If you haven't figured that out yet. And if you want to find out how related they are, start looking into an organization organized in Cincinnati called the Knights of the Golden Circle. The Knights of the Golden Circle. The next book that I want you to pick up and read is entitled Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar. A biography by Michael Grant. Now, in this book, it outlines a lot of things about ancient Rome, their political machinery, the way that Rome was really ruled by families, which is going to be the same way in the New World Order. I can guarantee you that. And it talks a lot about the ancient religions in this book. It's very revealing. It's a biography. It's factual. It's not fiction at all. And you need to read it. The next book is an extremely important book and puts a lot of pieces of the puzzle together. And the person who wrote this book didn't actually set out to even write about this subject. What he was doing was trying to research the Peasants' Revolt in England and ended up writing a book about Freemasonry because of what he found out in his investigation into the Peasants' Revolt in England. And that man is John J. Robinson. John J. Robinson. The title of the book is Born in Blood, The Lost Secrets of Freemasonry. Born in Blood, The Lost Secrets of Freemasonry. I'm just going to read to you a little bit from the dust jacket here. Its mysterious symbols and rituals had been used in secret for centuries before Freemasonry revealed itself in London in 1717. Once known, Freemasonry spread throughout the world and attracted kings, emperors, and statesmen to take its sacred oaths. It also attracted great revolutionaries such as George Washington and Sam Houston in America, Juarez in Mexico, Garibaldi in Italy, and Bolivar in South America. It was outlawed over the centuries by Hitler, Mussolini, and the Ayatollah Khomeini. But where had this powerful organization come from? What was it doing in those secret centuries before it rose from underground more than 270 years ago? And why was Freemasonry attacked with such intense hatred by the Roman Catholic Church? This amazing detective story answers these questions and proves that the Knights Templar in Britain, fleeing arrest and torture by Pope and King, formed a secret society of mutual protection that came to be called Freemasonry. Based upon years of meticulous research, this book solves the last remaining mysteries of the Masons, their secret words, symbols, and allegories, whose true meanings had been lost in antiquity, with a richly drawn background of the bloody battles, the opportunistic kings and scheming popes, the tortures and religious persecution that were the Middle Ages. It is an important book that may require that we take a new look at the history of events leading to the Protestant Reformation, and you've already heard about that on this show. But you need this book, Born in Blood, The Lost Secrets of Freemasonry. Get it. The next book is by the same author, John J. Robinson. After he wrote Born in Blood, he was intrigued, and so he wrote Born in Blood about Freemasonry. Then he had to go back and research the history of the Knights Templar, and he wrote this book entitled Dungeon, Fire, and Sword. Dungeon, Fire, and Sword. The Knights Templar in the Crusades by John J. Robinson, author of Born in Blood. And I'm going to read to you from this flyleaf, but, I will. Over the past 1,000 years, the bloodiest game of King of the Hill has been for supremacy on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon. This book recounts the stirring saga of the Knights Templar, who were called the Christian warrior and monks who occupied the sacred mount in the aftermath of the butchery of the First Crusade. Recruited to a life of poverty, chastity, and obedience intended to lead only to martyrdom on the battlefield. They were totally dedicated to the pious paradox that the wholesale slaughter of non-believers would earn the eternal gratitude of the Prince of Peace. The Templars amassed great wealth, which they used to finance their 200 years of war against Muslims on the desert, in the mountains, and up the broad sweep of the Nile Valley. The Templars' reward for those 2 centuries of military martyrdom was to be arrested by Pope and King, tortured by the Inquisition, and finally decreed out of existence. But their legend and legacy just would not die. In telling the incredible story of the Knights Templar, the author's clear explanation of the cultural and religious differences among the Templars' enemies and friends in the Middle East gives fresh understanding of the people who populate this restless region. Here are the Sunnis and the Shiites, the Kurds, the Armenians, the Arabs and Turks, who figure so prominently in today's headlines. The similarity of their antagonisms today and those of 800 years ago are often so striking as to be eerie. Dungeon, Fire, and Sword is a brilliant work of narrative history that can be read as an adventure story, a morality play, or a lesson in the politics of warfare. But, folks, be careful when you read these books that you do not believe them blindly, for sometimes the authors are taken in by the exoteric, but you still need to read them. Don't go away, folks. We've got to take our break. I'll be right back after this very short pause. And now, folks, we continue with our bibliography. I hope you've all got pen and paper and you're writing just as fast as you can. Don't worry if you don't get them all. If you just get some of them and start reading, that's what counts. You can always order this tape and play it back and copy them down at your leisure. At some future date, we will print a bibliography, but right now, tell you the truth, folks, we just don't have time to do that. We're so much engaged in producing this radio show and research, and I'm writing a second book and traveling and speaking, and I'll tell you something right now. I barely have time to talk to my wife, and she doesn't appreciate that too much, so we're going away this weekend. The next book, The Future of Man. The Future of Man. Once again, The Future of Man by Robert Clark Graham. Robert Clark Graham. You can order this book for $7 from SC Books. P.O. Box 1562. That's P.O. Box 1562. Friendswood, Texas. Friendswood, Texas. 77546. Once again, $7 for this book from SC Books. P.O. Box 1562. 862, Friendswood, Texas, 77546. Well, I'm really going to have to hurry to get a substantial amount of these books in. I hear somebody out there screaming and pulling their hair out. I can't possibly read all these books. Yes, you can. I've done it. I've read every book in my library, folks, and my library is bigger than most city libraries. If I can do it, you can do it. The only thing that will stop you is because you don't want to do it. And if you learn how to do productive research, some of them you don't have to read the whole books, believe me. You just have to learn how to do that. But you have to understand what the context of the book is before you take anything out of context. You can get in big trouble doing that, believe me. Next book is A History of Mathematics. A History of Mathematics, 2nd edition, by Carl B. Boyer. That's A History of Mathematics, 2nd edition, by Carl B. Boyer, B-O-Y-E-R. And the foreword is by Isaac Asimov, and this is published by Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y. Should be able, in fact, you should find that in most good bookstores. It should be on the shelf. Next one is the Dead Sea Scrolls. Be very careful about the Dead Sea Scrolls, folks, because everybody who's had their hands on them has been in the pay of the Rockefeller family. And the people who are translating them now are in the pay of the Rockefeller family. And they say that some of them have leaked out and that you're getting the real version. You don't know that. This could have been intentional leaks, and none of us know how to really translate these things. So the Rockefellers basically are telling us what the Dead Sea Scrolls say, and I can just about tell you what they're going to tell us right off the bat, that Jesus didn't die, and all kinds of things, and well, just wait and see. Just wait and see. This is called Understanding the Dead Sea Scrolls. Understanding the Dead Sea Scrolls. A reader from the Biblical Archaeological Review, edited by Herschel Shanks. Herschel Shanks, and this is published by Random House. Now I'm going to go a little speedy here because I don't have much time left, folks, and I want you to get as many of these as you can. Next one is Pagans and Christians. Pagans and Christians. This book is worth its weight in gold if you want to understand the early history of the church and the antagonism between the early church, the early Christian church, and the pagan religions. Pagans and Christians by Robin Lane Fox. Robin Lane Fox, published by Knopf, K-N-O-P-F. Get it, read it, you won't regret it. The next one is, that alarm you just heard go off is the bread maker. The loaf of bread is done, and I'm fixing to have a hot slice of bread with fresh butter on it as soon as I finish this broadcast, folks. Preparing for the 21st Century. Preparing for the 21st Century by Paul Kennedy, published by Random House. Now that's a modern book about modern things. You still need to read it. Next one is a very important book, printed in 1798. It has been reprinted by the Americanist Classics. The Americanist Classics, published by Western Islands, Boston, and Los Angeles. You can find this book easily. It's called Proofs of a Conspiracy by John Robison, A.M., 1798. Proofs of a Conspiracy by John Robison, A.M., 1798. The Americanist Classics, published by Western Islands, Boston, and Los Angeles. If you didn't get anything else I ever told you, get that book and read it. Another one that's very important is called Time Bomb. Time Bomb. We'll give you the roots of the Liberty Lobby in the Spotlight and America Free Radio, and will open your eyes on the Nazi influence in this country. Time Bomb by Pillar, published by Arco. And this is very revealing. Another one, well, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not going to risk misquoting it. This one is The New World Order. The New World Order, the Ancient Plan of Secret Societies. This is called The New World Order, the Ancient Plan of Secret Societies, by William T. Still. William T. Still. And who published this book? Let me see here. Huntington House Publishers. Published by Huntington House Publishers. Pick it up, read it. Remember, there's a lot of books called The New World Order. That's just one. I'm going to give you another one with the same title here in a few minutes. The next one is En route to global occupation. En route to global occupation. A high-ranking government liaison exposes the secret agenda for world unification by Gary H. Kah. Gary H. Kah. And this also is Huntington House Publishers. The next one is pretty good, called Dark Majesty. Now, this author, Tex Mars, has published a plethora of books about the coming New World Order. Unfortunately, he really laces it with his own religious viewpoints, and that's okay because he's got a lot of hard facts in here, but it tends to turn some people off and they don't want to read the books because of that. If you're a Christian, you will have no problem reading this book. If you're not, you may have some problem with the religious beliefs of Tex Mars, but if you can struggle with that and get through it, it will open your eyes and you will get a lot of good facts from this book. It's called Dark Majesty by Tex Mars, The Secret Brotherhood and the Magic of 1,000 Points of Light. You see, he understands this quite a bit like I do, only I don't try to foist my religion off on the rest of you. I'm a Christian, but I'm a different kind of Christian. I'm a Christian only in that I believe in the Ten Commandments as given to Moses by God and in the actual words attributed to Christ. Whether he lived or died or was the Son of God or was just a man walking on this earth, I believe that what he said is the most profound utterances ever spoken on this earth, whether they were ever spoken or not, folks. And I try to live my life by the Ten Commandments and by those words that Christ is credited with having spoken. The next word is Satanic Voices, Ancient and Modern. Satanic Voices, Ancient and Modern. Compiled by David Musa Pidcock. David Musa Pidcock. Now, this author is the head of the Islamic Party in Great Britain. So again, you have his fundamental religious beliefs mixed in this book with a lot of cold, hard facts, which I have checked and double-checked and are absolutely true. So if you, again, like the other book, if you can get past the religious viewpoint of the author and look at what the history of this thing is from his viewpoint and the facts that he delivers in this book, then believe me, you'll be way ahead of the game. It's published by Mustaqim, which I believe is the Islamic Party in Great Britain, and Mustaqim publishes Islamic art and literature. Now remember what I told you a long time ago. If you don't want to read opposing viewpoints or books written by people who believe in different religious or different gods than you do, if you don't want to read something that was written by a blatant communist, then I'm telling you right now, you're going to be whipped in this war. You're going to be beat down and enslaved in this war because you won't know anything about your enemy. You won't really know what the truth is because you'll be stuck, held prisoner in the dogma of your own beliefs. And I mean that, folks. A lot of us have been believing a lot of things for all of our lives that are absolute, total lies. And once you start your own research, you're going to find that out. And you're going to be probably as angry as I have been at times in my life. And you may do some stupid things like I have done at times in my life, which is one reason why none of you should ever, ever put me up on a pedestal, because I'm just like you. I'm just like you. I'm not any different. And I may be a lot more human than most, because I've gotten in touch with something inside that lets me feel and express my anger and my emotions and things that most people aren't in touch with. So when I'm angry, I scream and yell. But 5 minutes later, it's all over with. Don't put me on a pedestal. I'll fall off immediately, and you will all be disappointed. So if you don't do it, nobody will be disappointed. The next book is called The Unseen Hand. The Unseen Hand, An Introduction to the Conspiratorial View of History, by A. Ralph Epperson, my good friend who lives in Tucson, who's going to be a guest on this program here in about a week or two. And we're going to try to do maybe 3 or 4 episodes of The Hour of the Time with A. Ralph Epperson. This book, The Unseen Hand, is an incredible piece of work, and I highly recommend it. The next book is also by A. Ralph Epperson, and I've used this book extensively during our revelation of the mystery schools and Mystery Babylon in our series, our ongoing series. It's called The New World Order. The New World Order by A. Ralph Epperson. Get these books. Read them. If you can't find them, just wait. He'll be on this show pretty soon, and we'll give you a phone number and an address and a price, and you can send off and get them directly from him. This next book is extremely revealing. In fact, anything that this author has ever written, you should read. In fact, there's a center, a study center set up in Los Angeles called the Philosophical Society, which was founded by Manly P. Hall. That's the name of the author, Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree Freemason. Anything that he's ever written, get it and read it. This particular book is called Freemasonry of the Ancient Egyptians. Freemasonry of the Ancient Egyptians. Another good one to read that he wrote is The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, and anything else that you can find that's been written by Manly P. Hall, get it and read it. Make sure you understand the symbology. Don't get caught up in the exoteric bullshit, because that's the way they hide the real meaning. Another one, because a lot of the mystery tradition is wrapped up in what they call the Kabbalah, which is the ancient Jewish version of the mystery schools. And don't get me wrong, folks. Not all Jews are involved in this. Not all Catholics are involved in it. Not all Protestants are involved in it. Not all blacks, not all Arabs, not all whites. But some of every one of them are deeply involved in this. They are the people who worship Lucifer. If you worship Lucifer, you can be a member too. This book is called Judaica. Judaica. The Blackwell Dictionary of Judaica. This is the Blackwell Dictionary of Judaica by Dan Kahn and Sherbach. Dan Kahn and Sherbach. And it's published by Blackwell. Blackwell Reference. Printed in Great Britain by TJ Press, Padstow Limited, Padstow, Cornwall, but you can still order this from any bookstore. The Blackwell Dictionary of Judaica by Dan Kahn and Sherbach. Make sure you get it, because a lot of the Kabbalistic words need definitions, and you can find them in this book. Next one is a Dictionary of Freemasonry. A Dictionary of Freemasonry. A compendium of Masonic history, symbolism, rituals, literature, and myth. A Dictionary of Freemasonry by Robert McCoy. Robert McCoy. This book is worth its weight in gold if you know how, again, to interpret the symbolism and get at the esoteric meaning instead of the exoteric writing. Some of you already know what I'm talking about. Some of you have no idea what I'm referring to, but you will find out once you get into this. Another book that's worth its weight in gold is called The Mystery Religions. The Mystery Religions and Christianity. The Mystery Religions and Christianity by Samuel Angus. Samuel Angus. Published by University Books. Published by University Books. The Mystery Religions and Christianity by Samuel Angus. And we want to thank our member, Spencer. Thank you very much. Spencer supplied us with this volume. Next one's been around for a long time, but again, is worth its weight in gold. But you have to understand, again, the symbolism to read these books. A lot of these books were not meant for us to read and understand. They're meant for an adept, an initiate to understand. This is A History of Secret Societies, published by Citadel. A History of Secret Societies, published by Citadel, by Arkon Darul. Arkon Darul, D-A-R-A-U-L. Arkon, A-R-K-O-N, D-A-R-A-U-L. The Citadel Press, New York. A History of Secret Societies. Again, worth its weight in gold. The next one is The Occult Conspiracy. The Occult Conspiracy. Now, this book was written by someone who is in sympathy with the secret societies and may be a member, although I doubt from reading this. It doesn't sound like he is, but he is definitely in sympathy with them. So be careful when you read this that you don't get the wrong message. The Occult Conspiracy, Secret Societies, Their Influence and Power in World History by Michael Howard. That's Michael Howard. And this is published by Destiny Books, Rochester, Vermont. And the logo of Destiny Books is the sun and the moon. That should tell you something. Next one is America's Secret Assignment. Excuse me, I'm wrong. America's Assignment with Destiny. There's two books, and I had this confused with another one. The other one's called America's Secret Destiny. Throw that one out. That's total crap. That is esoteric from the word go all the way to the end. This one, though, you need to read. America's Assignment with Destiny by Manly P. Hall, and you will not believe what your eyes are telling you that your brain is reading. For this is an incredible book. It has incredible admissions, and you will begin to understand certain things that happen in history that you never could understand before. America's Assignment with Destiny by Manly P. Hall, and this is published by PRS, whatever that is. Let me look in here and find out so that you'll know. Philosophical, I should have known this. Oh man, I feel stupid now. Illustrated, second printing, Philosophical Research Society Incorporated. This is Manly P. Hall's organization. America's Assignment with Destiny by Manly P. Hall. Get it and read it. Another one that's extremely important that you read this book. Many people pass it by, snub their nose at it. Don't ever do that, folks. You're making a big mistake. This is the New Age Bible. The New Age Bible by Dr. John Rogers. The Hidden Truth Revealed. Just the symbology on the cover will send you reeling after you've listened to the episodes of the Mystery Religion of Babylon that we've already revealed on this show. Good night, folks. Welcome once again, folks, to the hour of the time. I'm your host, William Cooper. Folks, tonight's episode of Mystery Babylon, the 18th hour, I'm going to take directly, verbatim, from Chapter 9 of A. Ralph Epperson's book called The New World Order. He's going to be a guest on this show soon, and you'll know why once you hear what we've got to say tonight. So pay attention. And remember, as always, just because I'm giving you this series on Mystery Babylon doesn't mean that you're supposed to believe what I'm telling you blindly. That's why I gave you the bibliography last night. You've got to go out and find the truth from your own research. And I'm the only one that ever tells you that. Everybody else wants you to believe verbatim what they say because they're saying it and they're who they are. And I'm telling you not to believe anybody, not even me, not even your own mother, unless you can verify it in your own work, your own research. Make sure that you do it too. Now, the Bible, folks, discusses a being called Lucifer in both the Old and New Testaments, and we're going to be talking a lot about the Bible tonight because we have to look at this from every point of view. We've looked at it from the mystery schools. We've looked at it logically. We've looked at it historically. Now we're going to look at it from the Bible's point of view, but not strictly from the Bible's point of view. But you need to know this. The Bible discusses a being called Lucifer in both the Old and the New Testaments. Other names for this creature are Satan and the devil. One of the first explanations of just who this being known as Lucifer is found in the Old Testament in a book written by the prophet Isaiah, who wrote around 740 BC. He wrote that Lucifer was created full of wisdom and was perfect. He was created the anointed cherub that covereth the throne of God, and that he actually was upon the holy mountain of God. He later corrupted his wisdom by reason of his brightness. The Bible then records that God cast him to the ground. Isaiah wrote this in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. Quote, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" Unquote. And folks, this was the very first recorded UFO sighting, if indeed it was a sighting at all. Notice that the fall of Lucifer weakened the nations of the world, and this will be examined in other chapters of this study. Quote, "For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mound of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High, unquote. Luke, a writer in the New Testament, records in Luke chapter 10, verse 18, that Jesus said that he beheld, quote, Satan as lightning fall from heaven, unquote. Peter records in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4, that God has, quote, spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down, unquote, as well. Paul, another New Testament writer, wrote this about Lucifer in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14, in about 57 AD. Quote, and no marvel, for Satan is transformed into an angel of light, unquote. And in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9, Paul wrote that Satan was capable of working, quote, lying wonders, unquote. In around 90 AD, John, the author of the book known as Revelation, wrote in Revelation chapter 12, verse 9, that Satan was a, quote, dragon, unquote. Lucifer shows up in the original site of human habitation on earth called the Garden of Eden. The Creator, God, placed Adam, the first man, and later Eve, the first woman, in this garden, but told them that there were certain rules that they had to abide by. And these are spelled out in Genesis chapter 2, verses 16 and 17. Quote, and the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die, unquote. Later, Lucifer spoke through a serpent to Eve, but in reality to both men and women. Quote, yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, God hath said, ye shall not eat of it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil, unquote. So from the above information, it is possible to glean a little knowledge about the nature of Lucifer. 1, he was cast down from heaven because he desired to ascend directly into the seat of heavenly power, the throne of God. 2, he is referred to as the son of the morning. This appears to be a reference to Lucifer being similar to the sun, which also rises every morning. His desire, number 3, his desire is to sit on the north side of the mountain of God. Lucifer can deceive the world. This is number 4. Lucifer can deceive the world because he has been transformed into an angel of light. And 5, Lucifer can work lying wonders. Now, with those basic understandings, folks, of Lucifer in place, it will be possible to examine the views of others about this fallen entity. However, not all agree with a picture of Lucifer being evil. For Albert Pike wrote this, quote, there is no rebellious demon of evil, our principle of darkness, and in eternal controversy with God, unquote. In fact, Mr. Pike believes that Lucifer was not a force of evil, but could be a force for good, and he wrote this in Morals and Dogma, which I forgot to give you yesterday in the Bibliography. That's another one, write it down, folks. Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. He wrote this in Morals and Dogma, quote, for the initiates, those initiated into the true secrets of Masonry, this is not a person but a force, created for good, but which may serve for evil, unquote. To further amplify that belief of Mr. Pike's, it becomes important to quote a letter that he wrote on July the 14th, 1889, to the 23 Supreme Councils of the world. Judging from the contents of this letter, it appears that Mr. Pike was attempting to tell the leaders of the various Supreme Councils all over the world that they were to know that Lucifer was the secret god of the Masons. This letter clearly indicates that he believed the position that Lucifer was a god who had come to earth for the good of mankind, and he wrote this, quote, that which we must say to the crowd is, presumably Mr. Pike meant that the crowd was all of the non-Masons or the public at large. That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship a God, but it is the God that one adores without superstition, unquote. So it appears that one of the purposes of this letter was to advise all of the top-ranking Masons that they were to concoct a story that the Masons worshipped the traditional God so that none could ever accuse them of worshiping a cherub, a nun god, by the name of Lucifer. In other words, they were to deny that Lucifer was their god whenever an outsider was smart enough to break through all of the secrets and figure it out. Well, of course, folks, they're sworn to secrecy. They have to deny anything about the true secrets of their order. I mean, what kind of logic is this? That's plain as the nose in your face. You must understand that when you ask a Mason a question about Freemasonry, he's going to tell you a lie because he is sworn to secrecy, and he is sworn by blood oaths. And I know that by the time they've reached the 32nd degree, they've taken at least 32 different oaths swearing them to secrecy. Minimum. So, you should know this already. Now, let's continue, but I'm going to go back and read that part over. It appears that one of the purposes of this letter was to advise all of the top-ranking Masons that they were to concoct a story that the Masons worshipped the traditional God so that none could ever accuse them of worshiping a cherub, a nun god by the name of Lucifer. It's very important. In other words, they were to deny that Lucifer was their god whenever an outsider was smart enough to break through all of the secrets and figure it out, as I and many others have done, as a Ralph Epperson has done. So the secret inside the Masonic order is that Lucifer is their secret god. Any non-Mason today who attempts to explain to any of their Masonic friends or relatives that this is the secret inside the lodge will be met with an instantaneous denial. Every Mason, whether they know the secret of the lodge or not, will obviously deny the accusation because they must. Mr. Pike continued, quote, "You may repeat it to the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees. The Masonic religion should be by all of us initiates of the high degrees maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine," unquote. You see, Albert Pike at that time was at the head of all the lodges of Freemasonry of the world, and at the head of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in the United States of America. Here Mr. Pike seems to indicate that it is the 30th, 31st, and 32nd degrees that are to be taught the Luciferian doctrine. The direct evidence that the honorary 33rd degree is formally taught that Lucifer is the great architect of the universe will be presented later. But here Pike seems to say that that lesson is to be taught at an earlier degree. Quote, "If Lucifer were not God, would Adonai, the God of the Christians and the Jews, and his priest, calumniate," which is defined as spreading false and harmful statements about or to slander, would they calumniate him? Pike makes two incredible statements about Lucifer. One, he is considered to be a god, and two, the priests and the rabbis have it all backwards and are all slandering his name. As has been illustrated, the Bible states that Lucifer is nothing more than a fallen cherub. He's not a god. Yet Mr. Pike clearly states that Lucifer is a god. Now, how can that be? And secondly, those who claim that he is the wicked one are slandering him. Those individuals have it all wrong. And Mr. Pike continued, quote, "The true and pure philosophic religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai," unquote. Adonai also spelled, well, in the first place here, it's spelled A-D-O-N-A-Y, and he says Adonai, also spelled A-D-O-N-A-I, is the Hebrew word for God. To show that Pike was referring to the God of the Bible, he wrote this in his book entitled Morals and Dogma, quote, "Adonai, the rival of Baal and Osiris," unquote. In other words, Adonai is Typhon. That's an aside from me, folks. That's not written in this book. But as you've been listening to this series that I've given you, you know that Adonai, if this is true, if he is the rival of Baal and Osiris, then he is Typhon. As has been illustrated, Osiris is the sun god, and the sun has been shown to be a symbol of Lucifer. Adonai is the rival of Lucifer, both in the Bible and in the writings of Albert Pike. Quote, "But Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil," unquote. And here, once again, Mr. Pike writes that Lucifer and Adonai are rivals, and that the religious world has it all backwards. Lucifer is the good God, and Adonai is the God of evil and darkness. The author would like to interrupt the narrative to make an observation, and this observation is being made by a Ralph Epperson, not me. He wrote this book. That authenticity of that letter by Albert Pike that was just quoted has been questioned by a variety of writers. It has been reported that Mr. Pike made these comments in an encyclical hand-carried to the meeting of 23 Supreme Councils of the World on July 14, 1889 in Paris, France. This author, meaning A. Ralph Epperson, is willing to concede that the only evidence for the contents of this encyclical consists of it being quoted in a book written by a Frenchman named A.C. de la Rive, entitled La Femme et l'Enfant dans la ranque mécannerie universelle. I'm not a French speaker, folks, so that's the best I can do. My tongue doesn't do those things. Or at least I haven't practiced to make my tongue do those things. That title translated from French to English means The Woman and Child in Universal French Masonry. A copy of that page that contains that quote and the cover of the book has been supplied to this author, meaning A. Ralph Epperson, by a concerned researcher who had someone locate the book in France for him and make copies of the pertinent pages. The author has read another book that contains the English translation of that encyclical. That book is entitled Occult Theocracy and was written in 1933 by Edith Starr Miller. She cites the book by Mr. de la Rive as her source. She obviously believed that the letter was true and contained the actual thoughts of Mr. Albert Pike. He said it in so many other places, including in his own book, Morals and Dogma, that I also believe that the letter is true, and now I'm speaking as myself, William Cooper. In other words, going back to A. Ralph Epperson's words, in other words, the only source for the letter is a Frenchman who quotes it in his book and not Mr. Albert Pike himself. It must be assumed that Mr. Pike, if he were alive today and was asked whether the letter was his, would deny that he ever wrote such an encyclical, whether or not he had written it, because he must. He's sworn to maintain the secrets. But the reader is admonished to remember that if he did indeed worship Lucifer and wrote the encyclical, he would certainly have to deny it, so that answer would tell the researcher nothing. It is the contention of this writer, A. Ralph Epperson, and others who are attempting to decipher the secret symbols of the Masonic order that a small percentage of the Masons know that all of the symbols inside the lodge refer to Lucifer. And I am one of those who believe this, folks. My research has shown it to be absolutely true, and I can prove it. And I've already given you direct quotes from many Freemasons that already prove it. And it must be remembered that these Masons must, of necessity, do all that they can to deny any revelation of any of the secrets of the lodge. And certainly anyone today who believes that the contents of the letter are a fraud would do all that they could to discredit anyone who said that the thoughts were the actual thoughts of Pike. However, this writer, meaning A. Ralph Epperson, is of the opinion that Mr. Pike did indeed worship Lucifer, and is not basing that conclusion on just this one letter. Notice that Mr. Pike has written elsewhere that he considered Lucifer to be the secret god of the Masonic Lodge, and I, William Cooper, have also found that to be true, not only in one or two, but in many instances. So it is not essential to this writer's, A. Ralph Epperson's, position that this encyclical be proven to be valid. It is the author's contention that there is ample evidence from other sources, including from Masons other than Mr. Pike, that the secret god inside the Masonic lodges is Lucifer, and I wholeheartedly concur with Mr. Epperson. That evidence is available to anyone who cares to locate it. But there is another Mason who knows that Lucifer is the good god of a particular segment of the Masons. Pike's fellow 33rd degree Mason, Manly P. Hall, also felt that this god was a god of good. He wrote in his book entitled The Secret Teachings of All Ages, quote, "Sun worship played an important part in nearly all the early pagan mysteries. The solar deity was slain by wicked ruffians who personified the evil principle of the universe. By means of certain rituals and ceremonies, symbolic of purification and regeneration, this wonderful god of good was brought back to life and became the savior of his people," unquote. This God who came back to life is not the Jesus of the Bible, because Mr. Hall refers to him as the solar deity. He is referring to the death and resurrection of Osiris, covered in detail in the Masonic rituals. And I've already relayed to you who Osiris really is. In fact, in this series on the mystery religion, I've proven it time and time and time again. But Manly P. Hall has further identified Lucifer as the god of some of his fellow Masons. He has written this in his book entitled The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. It's one of the books that I gave you last night, folks. When the Mason, quote, when the Mason learns the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of the living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy, unquote. Mikhail Bakunin, the Russian anarchist, also addressed this question of evil and good gods, and he wrote, quote, the evil one is the satanic revolt against divine authority, revolt in which we see the fecund, defined as being fertile, germ of all human emancipations, the revolution. Socialists recognize each other by the words, in the name of the one to whom the great wrong has been done. Satan, folks, is the eternal rebel, the first freethinker, and the emancipator of worlds. He makes men ashamed of his bestial ignorance and obedience. He emancipates him, stamps upon his brow the seal of liberty and humanity, in urging him to disobey and eat of the fruit of knowledge, unquote. You see, I've been telling you all along that socialists and the mystery religion of Babylon are the same, and now, in his book, A. Ralph Epperson has proven it. That thought, that Lucifer was a good spirit to whom a great wrong was done, is the basic thought that holds the New Age together, according to Tex Mars, the author of 2 major books on the subject. And he has written, quote, many New Agers commend Lucifer because by tempting Eve he enabled man to evolve toward enlightened knowledge and godhood, unquote. Remember I told you that with the gift of intellect, man will develop technology that will make him God? They are working feverishly in laboratories now to uncover the secret of immortal life. Mr. Mars discusses the thoughts of a leader in a mystical organization called the Stell Group. How many times have I mentioned that? The Stell Group. Named Eklal Koshana. He writes that this New Age leader says that, quote, Lucifer is the head of a secret brotherhood of spirits. The brotherhood is named after Lucifer because the great angel Lucifer has been responsible for the abolishment of Eden in order that men could begin on the road to spiritual advancement, unquote. Lars Hansen was reared in the Stell Group. Lars Hansen was reared in the Stell Group. Tom Valentine was a member of the Stell Group. Tom Valentine wrote a book called The Life and Death of Planet Earth. Get it and read it, folks. Tom Valentine was associated with the Communist Party. Now he's a member of the Liberty Lobby, which came right out of the old German Nazi Bund. They used to sing the Horst Wessel song at the beginning of their meetings. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up. Why do you think every time somebody calls Tom Valentine and asks him about Freemasonry and their complicity in the conspiracy, he covers it up and hangs up on the person as quickly as possible and denies that there's any complicity of Freemasonry? Now, this makes me a little hot under the collar. I've got to cool down a little bit, so we're going to take a break, folks. Don't go away. I'll be right back after this very short pause. Well, folks, I needed that little break. I'll tell you right now, Tom Valentine has been attacking me for years because he knows that I know who he is and what he's about, that I know the origins of the Liberty Lobby, that I know their message is that our government is no good, it doesn't work, that it's turned against us, and it's all lies. For it's the people who are in these secret societies who have turned against us, who are delivering that message to us to get us to voluntarily overthrow or get rid of our own government, the only government in the history of the world that has ever set man free. And I'm the only one who let you know this. It's not our government. It's not the Constitution. It's not the Bill of Rights. It's not the structure. It's the secret societies. It's the Tom Valentines. It's the Bogreitzes. It's all of these people who belong to Freemasonry, and the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, and the Knights Templar, and the Sovereign and Military Order of the Knights of Malta, and the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, and many more. Many more. Socialist, international socialism, under many, many different names. You see, folks, you see, the senator was right. Senator McCarthy was absolutely right. He was correct. He just didn't know the proper name. He thought he was ferreting out communism. He wasn't. You see, if he understood what I understand, then he would have survived the attacks of the very people that he was trying to ferret out, who owned the media that turned against him and destroyed him. Hollywood, who turned against him and destroyed him through manipulating the opinion of the public. See, communism, folks, is just a word. It's another boogaboo enemy. The real enemy, folks, is Mystery Babylon. I could never say what I said tonight before, because if I had, it would have been misinterpreted. I had to have independent verification that the Stell group worshipped Lucifer before I could reply legitimately to the attacks upon me by Tom Valentine. Because if I had told you what I know without independent verification, all of you would have turned against me as being a poor sport or some other bullshit. It's a real load off my chest to be able to deliver that message to you. I can tell you that right now. Real load off my chest. Let me continue. Remember, this is chapter 9 of A. Ralph Epperson's book, The New World Order. So there is a basic disagreement about the nature of Lucifer, also known as Satan or the devil. The Bible depicts him as a force for evil, and Mr. Pike and others pictures him as a force for good. But the connection between Lucifer and the ancient mysteries needs to be further amplified. The mysteries had a purpose, to create a Superman. Where have you heard that before? Hitler said it. And they're working in secret in laboratories right now toward the same goal. The mysteries had a purpose, to create a Superman, one capable of understanding the true nature of the universe and to worship the true God. W.L. Wilmshurst, a Mason, wrote these thoughts in his book entitled The Meaning of Masonry. Quote, "This, the evolution of man into Superman, was always the purpose of the ancient mysteries, and the real purpose of modern masonry is not the social and charitable purposes to which so much attention is paid, but the evolution of those who aspire to perfect their own nature and transform it into more godlike quality," unquote. And need I say as an aside here, what a Freemason said to a friend of mine who was his son? He said, "Son, if you are not one of us, you are nothing." And of course the son was not one of them, and to his great credit has never become one of them. W.L. Wilmshurst amplified this thought a little later in his book. Quote, "Man who has sprung from the earth, meaning that he was not created by a creator, God, and developed through the lower kingdoms of nature to his present rational state, has yet to complete his evolution by becoming a God-like being and unifying his consciousness with the omniscient, to promote which is and always has been the sole aim and purpose of initiation," unquote. And he goes on, quote, "No higher level of attainment is possible than that in which the human merges in the divine consciousness and knows as God knows," unquote. What have I been telling you all this time, folks? So just as Satan tempted mankind with the ability to know good and evil themselves, just like God, without his assistance, now the Masons are teaching that they too could become a god through an initiation into the ancient mysteries. John Anthony West, in his book Serpent in the Sky, wrote this in support of Mr. Wilmshurst's statement, quote, Egypt started with the concept of divine attributes within man. The gods are not brought down to earth, rather man is raised to the gods, unquote. Others, besides the above-mentioned Masons like Louis Feuerbach, have joined the discussion with similar thoughts. He was a 19th century philosopher and a hero of the communists like Karl Marx. In fact, Friedrich Engels, the co-worker with Karl Marx during the time Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto as a hired writer hack, wrote this about his friend. Quote, all the communists of 1845 were followers of Feuerbach. The reason that the communists supported the ideas of Feuerbach is apparent when the student reads his writings, for he wrote, quote, man alone is our God, our Father, our Judge, our Redeemer, our true home, our law, and our rule, the Alpha and Omega of our life and of our political, moral, public, and domestic activity. There is no salvation save through the medium of man, unquote. John Denver, the well-known popular singer, has adopted this same philosophy about his divinity. He has been quoted as saying this after his new conversion. Quote, it's the single most important experience of my life. I can do anything. One of these days I'll be so complete I won't be human, I'll be a god, unquote. It's the same thing that's taught in the Mormon Church. If a married couple produce many children and conform to the teachings of the church, then when they die, they will be gods, and they will be given a planet of their own, and they will continue their reproduction, only they will be souls, and they will populate the planet and will be the gods of the planet. What crap! What absolute crap! Where do these people get their egos? I'll be a god. Yeah, sure you will. If you guys are all gods, then how come you still got to pay your bills? How come you get sick? And how come you got to go to the doctor? And if you go to the doctor, what's that make the doctor if you're God? Huh? You're all a bunch of fools. You're blithering idiots. You've lost your mind. Your egos have run away with the rest of you. And you're going to die like everyone else. And you're going to find out, like everyone else, what really happens when people die. And as far as I know, no one on this earth really knows or is likely to know until it happens to them. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Mr. Hall, the Mason, stated a similar thought when he wrote this in his book entitled Lectures on Ancient Philosophy. Quote, we may study the star intellectually, but we have never attained consciousness until we are the star. Unquote. But this idea that man could become a god is not new. The Bible anticipated it, and Isaiah wrote about it back in 741 BC. This is what he wrote in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 10. Quote, thus saith the Lord, understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. Unquote. And once again in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 5, quote, I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me, unquote. And remember, all the Roman emperors declared themselves God, and they all died like every other man died, some of them by the assassin's sword or knife. God, yeah, Boy, you guys just take the cake, I'll tell you. How you can meet and throw that baloney around to each other and swallow it and pump each other up to believe that you're gods or you're going to be gods is beyond my understanding. The Bible teaches that there is but one God and that mankind has no possibility of sharing his Godhead. One who apparently has not believed those statements in the Bible is Shirley MacLaine, who has become a spokesman for the position that man can become a god. She has written several books on the subject of her support of the New Age. Newsweek magazine described her as the New Age evangelist, and she wrote the following statement in her book entitled Dancing in the Light, quote, "We are part of God," unquote, and this elsewhere in the same book, quote, "If one says audibly, 'I am God,' the sound vibrations literally align the energies of the body to a higher attunement," unquote. Yeah, I bet it does. Yep, I bet the insanity molecules take over every portion of the body, and you really all feel great until you have to go pay your rent. Or you catch the flu. Or somebody just knocks the crap out of you to try to bring you back to reality, which is exactly what should happen when you do those kinds of things. What's wrong with just living life peacefully with other people and enjoying what we have? What's the big thing that you have to become God? And I'll tell you right now, you never will. You might as well just, well, never mind. If you want to be God, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're deceiving yourself, and that's okay as long as you don't hurt anyone else. If each man is a god, mankind is capable of making decisions for their own welfare. Each man has complete control of his decision-making. According to Miss McLean, in fact, man's control is extended into areas few have ever claimed for mankind, and these are the thoughts of Miss McLean. Quote, "I think we choose to be together. We choose our parents, and I think the parents choose the children they want to have before they ever come into an incarnation," unquote. Tell that to an abused child. Tell that to a child who's raised by drunken, miserable, stinking parents who don't give a damn about the child. Tell that to all those people who know that that's total, false, irresponsible ramblings of an insane maniac. And you know what they say when they're confronted with this? They say you agreed to it in a previous life and that you're paying off your karmic debt. You see, they have a rationalization for everything, and it's just more bullshit. More lies, more crap. She went on further to record another strange thought when she wrote this, quote, "There was no such thing as reality, only perception," unquote. Well, Shirley, let me tap you on the jaw with my fist, and then you tell me that there's no reality. Of course, I don't really want to do that, folks, but that's just a way to bring her to her senses. If it were legal, I might try it. Might wake her up. Might show her that her perception is only reality. One can only wonder where Miss McLean got these bizarre thoughts from. Several clues that can assist the student in understanding her have been given by either her own revelations or from some articles that have appeared about her in the media. In her book entitled Out on a Limb, she wrote about her meetings with her married lover in her apartment. This God is breaking up somebody else's marriage, and she's meeting with her married lover in her apartment. She commented that he looked at her shelf of books on, amongst other subjects, Marxist theory, including a biography of Karl Marx. There's nothing wrong with that. I have those books in my library and many more. But knowing Shirley MacLaine, and folks, I do, knowing this scatterbrained twit, when she has books on Marxist theory, including a biography of Karl Marx, you can bet that she's a socialist. And of course she is. Parade magazine of December 18th, 1988 had an article on Miss McLean in which it revealed that her den had lots of framed pictures. Shirley with communist Fidel Castro and with communist Nikita Khrushchev, amongst others. The magazine reported how Shirley and her lover, quote, talked about democratic socialist principles and how it was possible to have them both at the same time if the rich would only share their wealth more. Elsewhere in her book, she wrote about how much of a hypocrite she was when she added this contradictory statement, and they all do. Quote, wanted to talk to him about how I had made a lot of money and that it made me feel elite in a world that was broke to know I could buy just about anything I wished for, unquote. Just like Jane Fonda, who's been pushing for gun control for years, who was stopped by law enforcement officers on the freeway, and her car was found to contain many pistols and weapons, firearms. Hypocrites and liars. However, nowhere in her book did she say that she had freely donated any of her own wealth to the relief of the poor. Apparently, she believes that the communist ideas about wealth sharing are acceptable only as long as she does not have to share her wealth like she wants the other rich to do. You see, most rich purport to be socialist, but in actual practice, none of them really are. None of them would give away their wealth to the poor, ever. Yet they pretend to be liberal, socialist, Marxists. In reality, they demonstrate that they are exactly the opposite. They are liars and hypocrites. For the whole communist socialist idea is for the little people, you and I, who are to be their slaves in the New World Order. Miss McLean has since gone on a nationwide tour promoting her newfound religious views to the public. Newsweek magazine reported in 1987 that she had made a great deal of money explaining her new thoughts to others. Quote, since McLean began her tour in January 1987, more than 10,000 people in 15 cities have paid $300 admission fee, unquote. Well, you know me, folks. I have absolutely nothing against that. If she could have got $1,000 a head admission free, it would be okay with me. Now, 10,000 times 300 equals $3 million. I still have no complaint with that. This is the United States of America. If somebody wants it, give it to them. If they want to pay it, if they're that stupid, that's fine with me. I believe that people should be giving somebody something, though. But I also believe that if they're stupid enough to pay it, then they should be taken. That's how you learn. And a lot of people would disagree with me, but I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry. That's what I believe. Obviously, Shirley's tours have proven to be both popular and lucrative. The Newsweek article on her seminar mentioned a little of what she teaches in them. The following are a few of her comments. Quote, the earth is moving off its axis, she says, and only the collective consciousness of mankind can right it. For the spiritually inclined, a window of light will appear on those days, August 16th and 17th, 1987, that McLean says will allow us to rise to a higher plane of cosmic understanding, unquote, pure bullshit, pure crap, pure New Age mesmerism, if you will. For nothing happened on those dates. Evangelist McLean became Dr. McLean when she reported some of her new cures for two of the world's most serious medical problems, AIDS and cancer of the abdomen. According to the Newsweek article, she told her audience, quote, they, or those who paid to hear her in the 15 cities on the tour, all got to hear McLean's pronouncements on such subjects as AIDS. She thinks sufferers are sick because they have been bereft of love necessary to sustain the balance of health. And cancer. For cancer of the abdomen, she advises putting patients in a yellow room because yellow is the color frequency of that part of the body, unquote. More New Age mesmerism bullshit crap. And to think her patients only have to pay $300 for such wisdom. But Dr. McLean is not as dumb as one might think. The Newsweek magazine article reported, quote, everyone who attended had to sign waivers absolving the seminar's organizers from responsibility for psychological injury, unquote. How clever of Miss McLean. So someone in charge of arranging her seminars is aware that her ideas might cause psychological damage to those attending, and they have moved to protect her from malpractice lawsuits. Now, not only was this New Age evangelist making money on her personal lecture tours, she was also making money on her best-selling books. Now, I don't know what's wrong with A. Ralph Epperson. I don't know why he's saying this, because he purports to believe in the Constitution and the principles and ideals upon which this country was based, and there is nothing wrong with making money on anyone's personal lecture tours or on their books. And I can tell you right now that A. Ralph Epperson makes money on his lecture tours and on his books, and that's how he makes his living. So as far as I'm concerned, that is a partial discreditation of A. Ralph Epperson. As of July 1987, her book entitled Out on a Limb had sold 3 million copies, and her other major seller, Dancing in the Light, had sold 2.2 million. Could he be jealous? Is it possible that A. Ralph Epperson is jealous of Shirley MacLaine's ability to sell books? Time magazine reported that her 5 books on self-exploration and self-promotion have run to more than 8 million copies. Now, to me, that's admirable. If someone can write something that is so desirable by 8 million people that it sells 8 million copies, I don't care what they're writing about. That's admirable. She's providing an income for herself, her family, and people are obviously buying her books because they want them. Therefore, she's supplying them with a service. Whether it's bullshit or not, it doesn't matter. That's the American way, folks. That's what it's all about. There was a lot of people back in the early part of this century who hated automobiles, and therefore Henry Ford was the devil. But he sold an awful lot of them, and he came under the criticism of a lot of people for doing it. Sorry, folks, that's the American way. As far as I'm concerned, what A. Ralph Epperson is spouting in these few sentences here is socialism. And I admire him for his research and what he's done, and I know that he makes his living selling books and lecturing. And for him to spout this socialist attitude when he is doing the same thing is not acceptable. And he is a friend of mine, and I will certainly bring this to his attention. You know, I read this book a long time ago, and I'd forgotten that he had said these things. But I certainly will bring it to his attention. In fact, we may talk about it on the air when he's a guest of this show, and he will be a guest of this show very shortly. So you can look forward to some kind of an explanation of this. He says it appears as if selling the New Age religion can be very profitable. Well, Barnum and Bailey was very profitable, and it was all an illusion, just like the New Age religion. But in summary, perhaps the most cogent comment about the battle between the New Age and the Christians was made by Nesta Webster in her book entitled Secret Societies. Quote, "The war now begins between the two contending principles, the Christian conception of man reaching up to God, and the secret society conception of man as God, needing no revelation from on high, and no guidance but the law of his own nature. And since that nature is in itself divine, all that springs from it is praiseworthy, and those acts, usually regarded as sins, are not to be condemned." Unquote. You've heard me say before that in the New World Order, the law will be, "Do as thou wilt" shall be the whole of the law. And it will. The battle lines are drawn between those who believe in a creator God and those who believe that man can become God. These are the two opposing positions, and the battle between them, dear listeners, has most certainly begun. Now, don't get too upset over my criticism of the few paragraphs that A. Ralph Epperson wrote, condemning Shirley MacLaine's ability to write books and lecture and bring in a lot of money. For I'm sure that in his zeal, which many of us get carried away with, in his zeal to condemn the worship of Lucifer and the secret societies, he carried it a little bit too far, but we'll bring it up when he's a guest on the show. For I'm a little bit curious about it myself, but I haven't jumped off the edge. Let's put it that way. Good night. Across America and around the world, you're listening to the Hour of the Time, the only hour that ever was or ever will be, for during this hour you will decide your future and thus our collective futures. I'm your host, William Cooper. Everybody look back in that corner at the far side of the room where it's real dark behind that chair. I'm going to turn on a very, very bright light. and I want you all to watch the cockroaches scatter. For tonight, I'm going to read verbatim to you from a book that we found in a dusty shelf far back in the rear of a used bookstore that proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that what I've been revealing to you in the many segments of the series entitled The Mystery Schools on this program, The Hour of the Time, has been not only true, but right on target, and the first time that this information has ever been exposed in its entirety to the people of the world. Now, you had better go to the used bookstores in your cities, and you'd better get there before the cockroaches get there, because I tell you now, they know that we are searching for proof and that we are digging for the evidence that we will use in the future to hang them by their own rope. You need to get there first and buy any and every book that is concerned with any and every secret society, mystery, religion, or cult that you can find. If you don't understand them, and if you don't want to use them to help us expose these people, then send those books to us, because we will put them to the best use. I'm holding in my hand an old, faded, what used to be red hardbacked covered book. It's almost orange now because it's faded with age, entitled Fundamental Laws, 68th Convocation. On the front of the cover is some of the symbology of the mystery schools. There is a rope representing the snake eating its own tail, also known as the magic circle. Within this magic circle, there is a triangle, actually 3 triangles, one within the other. Within the triangles, there is the symbol of the skull and bones. There is the symbol of wings around the world. There's the symbol of the ark, the anchor, and the 3 letters TRY beneath the 3 triangles. This is the verbatim written report published in 1916, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm going to read to you from. Fundamental Laws, a report of the 68th Convocation of the Rose Cross Order, giving a resume of the proceedings of the convocation, together with most of the lectures that were delivered during this time of the convocation by the several delegates present. Also a report of the work of ancient initiation in the grove of Osiris, as especially prepared for the occasion. Below that is the symbol of a triangle, with 3 stone steps representing the 3 degrees of initiation. Up on the top step is a cross, in the center of which is a rose. And beneath the triangle, again, the 3 letters TRY. This is copyrighted 1916, published by the Philosophical Publishing Company, Allentown, Pennsylvania, for the members of the Rose Cross Order. On the next page is a roll of honor. One of the names here stands out and almost knocked me over when I saw it, for the name is Lars Hansen. Now, it is not the Lars Hansen that we've discussed on this show, and we're going to look into it to find out if this was his father or grandfather or great-grandfather. Could have been either one of the 3. But we will find out, believe me. We know that Lars Hansen's parents were members of the mystery school, and in particular, the Metternich-Stell group, where Lars Hansen was reared. In explanation of the contents of this book, and I'm reading verbatim from the introduction in explanation. In explanation of the contents of this book, it is to be stated that these articles do not give the inner work of the Rose Cross Order, but simply the outer, the public teachings. Now, you'll remember in the Mystery School series, I taught you about the exoteric and the esoteric. What you're going to get in this book, because they never publish the esoteric anywhere, it's always hidden in symbology, but there are incredible admissions in this book that you will hear in the exoteric. Reading again, verbatim. The Illuminati and its soul science work may be called the child of the Rose Cross Order. Years ago it was found that where there was one person who desired to follow the work with heart and soul, in other words, who was willing to live the life as taught by the order, there were 100 others who desired teachings from the order, but who were not willing to dedicate their lives to the sublime work. Now I break from this for a moment to remind you that I have previously stated that the fraternity of Freemasons, the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, the Sovereign and Military Order of the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templars, the Mormon Church, all of these, the Illuminati, the Order, the Skull and Bones, are all the same organization. And what you have just heard is the first admission of that fact. And you are going to hear more as I progress. And remember, I'm reading this right out of their own publication, a hardbound book published by the Philosophical Society in Allentown, Pennsylvania, specifically for the Rose Cross Order. Continuing. These thousands had to be taken care of, and as a result, the Illuminati and its soul science work was born. When in April, now that's April of 1916, folks, April of 1916, remember that. When in April, the order went forth to the brethren that a sacred convocation was to be held, all delegates were requested to prepare articles on soul science so that regular lecture sessions could be held. The lectures that follow are the result. All these lectures were given in open session and are to be considered as soul science work, though in entire harmony with the teachings of the Rose Cross Order. The work of the Rose Cross Order as given to its students can never be published. It is a secret, sacred work between teacher and student. Let me read that again for you. It is a secret, sacred work between teacher and student. It is a soul training, an inner initiation, and such work continues until the student has reached initiation, after which he is called upon to attend a convocation, and at which time the degree work is conferred upon him. But the inner work always precedes the outer work, as the outer work is only a bond binding together the brotherhood. Thus a word in explanation. Many having heard of the great order and its work, and actually knowing nothing of its inner work, have ignorantly or with fraudulent intent established so-called Rose Cross bodies. And these bodies, knowing nothing of the true work of the Rose Cross, have nothing but a ritualistic initiatory rite or degree work. We would refer all seekers to authorities on the Rose Cross and on initiation, and they will then find that the true Rose Cross is actually a school of spirituality with a degree ceremonial initiation as the climax. And this is signed by the Hierophant of the Order. In the preface, early in the summer, instructions were received from the hierarchies to call the inner circle of the Rose Cross Order into session, and thus to fitly celebrate the 68th year of the Rose Cross Order in America. Orders were immediately issued to those who have the privilege of attending this convocation, and on June the 1st, 1916, the convocation was called to order and the preliminary lectures were started. At this convocation, all delegates were instructed to prepare and to deliver articles which should have a bearing on the conditions of the present day and which should be the means of helping humanity. However, because of the limited amount of time at the disposal of those who could attend, only a few were enabled to prepare such lectures, with the results that there were not as many lectures delivered as might have been had the delegates had more time at their disposal. But even so, there were from 2 to 3 lectures each day, and most of these lectures will be found in this present volume, though many of the lectures cannot be given in book form, as they were only delivered as from teacher to those of the inner circle. From the beginning of the month until the day of the 13th, there were lectures in the Assembly Hall, which had been built in 1910 for the express purpose of holding these yearly convocations. But on the 13th there were no lectures, as all of the day was required for making the preparations necessary in order that the ancient mysteries might be given to the delegates in a form of symbolism consisting of 3 degrees. I can do no better than to give the article prepared by Grace K. Morey of Buffalo, New York, the secretary of the Rose Cross Sacred College for the Buffalo, New York papers, and which appeared in the Buffalo Express, July 16th, 1916. This is entitled, Ancient Mysteries of Egypt Given in an Initiation of 3 Degrees. Pay close attention, folks, for what you're going to hear now confirms much of what I have been revealing to you in the series on the Hour of the Time known as the Mystery Schools. Quoting from the book once again, under the authority of the Rose Cross Order founded in America in 1858, prominent delegates of the order were gathered in the most remarkable conclave held during the last 5,000 years, the publication of whose records now opens to the world the connection of Egypt in her ages of true religion, power, and glory with the mystic seal of the United States, whose heraldic symbolism declaring the mighty destiny of America has until now only been known to a limited number. Not anymore. At Beverly Hall, in the beautiful Tohickon Valley, about 4 miles from the town of Quakertown, men and women of all ranks of life and from all parts of the world, high masons and members of the Eastern Star, physicians, teachers, authors, and members of all denominations, inclusive of the Hebrew, all these assembled at the call of the Grand Master of the Rose Cross Order for the 68th Convocation. And that should silence the cockroaches who are now scurrying from the light, who say that they are not all one order. They are known as the Brotherhood, the Order, the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, the Fraternity of Freemasons, and, of course, those of you who have been listening know the rest. Reading again from the book, some years ago, R. Swinburne Clymer, author of The Philosophy of Fire, Ancient Mystic Oriental Masonry, The Rosicrucians, Their Teachings, Mysteries of Osiris, Soul Science and Immortality, and over 30 other works, bought a mountainous tract of land, and on this was built, quote, Beverly Hall, unquote, an assembly hall, press rooms, and libraries and chemical laboratory, which, surrounded by orchards, vineyards, and rose gardens, set in terraced lawns, presents with its collie kennels and poultry plants a splendid combination of the beautiful and the practical. To this has been added the mystic, for in a secluded and wooded tract of 50 acres of this land, an artificial lake was made from a mountain stream, a throne room erected, and other improvements made which would be needed for the initiation of neophytes in the Egyptian mysteries. The convocation was called to order on June 1st in the Assembly Hall, built over 5 years ago for that purpose, and the delivery of a series of lectures upon practical as well as mystical subjects began and continued until the close of the convocation. The delegates and teachers presented the lectures, which were followed by discussions upon the subjects of eugenics, scientific motherhood, code of ethics for the schools and home, spiritual Christianity, that's a joke, personal hygiene, diet and health, sin, authority and individuality, Jacob's ladder, initiation, reincarnation, soul development, the second coming of the Christ, and the mystic significance of the seal of the United States. In the time of Solomon, as in the time of the Egyptian priesthood, no ceremony was ever held unless the circle of Solomon, commonly called the sacred seal of Solomon, had been previously prepared. But since the fall of Egypt and of the Temple of Solomon, this seal has been practically unknown, except to a limited number of students of ancient religions and mysteries. Folks, the seal of Solomon is not the six-pointed star which is on the flag of Israel. It is not the seal of David or the star of David. It is not the seal of Solomon, as you will soon discover. During the first week in June, in the grove, especially prepared for the dramatization of the ancient mysteries of Osiris, the seal of Solomon, often called the magic circle, was especially built, and on June 11th, the dedication of the magic circle took place in the presence of the delegates of the Rose Cross Order, some of whom were natives of Germany, England, and Russia. This was in accordance with the system as practiced by the ancient priests of Egypt and the Sanhedrin of the Temple of Solomon. On the night of June 13th, the first session of the class, including those of the order taking part in the initiation, assembled in the grove of Osiris, which was illuminated by electricity from a central powerhouse, especially prepared for the purpose and the initiation of the ancient mysteries of Egypt in 3 degrees and 6 scenes. All students of the ancient mysteries and religions know that in the Temple of Solomon there were 3 courts. The outer court for the people being composed of 700 selected teachers and leaders. These were members of the first degree, Illuminati called also seekers, travelers, or soldiers. The middle court, or members of the second degree, were 70 in number and were supposed to be in the hall of meditation and acted as mediators between the people and the inner sanctuary. Above all was the inner court, or circle of the 7 priests and the master or high priest, who were the teachers between God and man, mediators between the seen and the unseen. In the Egyptian mysteries, the first court was made up of the royal youth of Egypt, and such students from foreign countries as desired to enter the temple and priesthood, and these during probation were often known as, quote, soldiers of the priesthood, unquote, as it was their duty while undergoing the preliminary training and test to guard the priesthood and its work even to the death. The second class, corresponding to a second degree, were those who had passed this test, and who were in the hall of meditation and purification in preparation for the first vows and the dedication of the body, mind, soul, and spirit to God and the service of mankind. The third class, called the third degree, were those who had passed with credit the tests of the first degree, the purification of the second, as well as the various stages of development required of all students in the halls of meditation. In the royal third degree, which took place in the temple, the neophyte received the final instruction. After this came the final test in the beautiful ceremony of the death of the old life, the giving up of the body and its temptations, and the raising of the slain Osiris, our spiritual body, by his faithful spouse Isis, the soul, with the final illumination. On the 15th of June, the first section of the representatives left Beverly Hall for their respective homes, and the second section began to arrive for the preparatory lectures, and on the 19th of June, the ceremonies were repeated so that all might witness the initiation and take part in it so as to become members. So far as can be learned, either through travel or history, never before since the fall of Egypt and its priesthood and the fall of the Temple of Solomon has there ever been a grove, a lake to represent the Nile, a magic circle, or a temple prepared, nor is it believed that anywhere in the world does there today exist such a circle. Nearest to this, however, is Stonehenge of the Druids of Britain, to which their descendants travel each year at a certain time to greet the sun and renew their vows. This is the first time, therefore, in 5,000 years, that any order has attempted to build up this sacred emblem under the stately oak, so that people of modern civilization might witness the beauties of the life and religion of the ancient people, whose teachings of individual soul development made the glory of Egypt, the lost dreams of all Israel, the teachings of the Magi of Persia, all that was true in India, the splendid philosophy of Greece, the magnificence of the early Romans, the basis of pre-Christian Ireland's great schools, as well as the familiar Holy Grail legends of Britain, Celt, and Gaul. In this light of brotherhood of man and fatherhood of God was founded this great republic foretold by Virgil, upon whose seal is set the Egyptian pyramid, completed by the white stone of spiritual purification as the crown of the ages. It's time for our break, folks. Don't go away, for I'll be right back after this very short pause. In the winter, far beneath the snow, lies a seed that with the sun's love becomes the rose. Only those of you who have listened to the full series of broadcasts on the hour of the time of the mystery schools will understand exactly what that means. And you will know and have an entirely different understanding of that song, which is beautiful, to say the least, but does not convey the message that many of you have always thought you heard. You see, the mystery schools speak to each other in symbology, in a symbolic language that they have learned to use over the millennia to hide their real secrets, their real intent, their real work, which has always been from the beginning to reestablish on this earth an ancient government ruled by a council of wise men, a benevolent despotism, a one-world totalitarian socialist government. Don't ever forget that, folks. If you love being free, the New World Order utopia is not for you, and it certainly is not for me. Continuing now from the book entitled Fundamental Laws, the publication of a report of the 68th Convocation of the Rose Cross Order, during which they admit the existence of the Illuminati, they admit the existence of the Order, they admit the existence of the Brotherhood, they admit that all of these secret organizations, including Freemasonry, are all the same organization, all working toward the same goal. An incredible admission printed in their own publication, a hardbound book found up on a dusty shelf way back in the rear corner of an old used bookstore. Such is the work of the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence, CAGI. You too can become a member by sending $45 to William Cooper, Post Office Box 1420. That's Post Office Box 1420. Sholow, SHOWLOW. That's Sholow, Arizona, 85901. That's $45 for your membership to William Cooper, Post Office Box 1420, Sholow, Arizona, 85901. Also, I need to tell you, folks, Stan has retired. Please don't call his number. Please do not write or send orders to his old address. Stan got tired, and I don't blame him, and he has retired for the third or fourth time, and probably the last. Stan did some incredible work for our cause and our organization. We've always loved him. We will always love him. He will always be in our hearts. And we will, of course, miss him. Quoting again from the book, the American constellation of 13 stars, set in the form of a double triangle, was foretold by Merlin of King Arthur's court, and the philosophy of the Holy Grail and of Egypt's glory and Solomon's temple has been the day star of every great American statesman from Washington to Abraham Lincoln. Now, if you've been listening to this program, you know the day star is a reference to Lucifer, the light bringer, the angel of light, the morning star, also known as the son of the morning. After the ceremonies in the grove, there was given in the dining room of Beverly Hall at midnight a feast of the gods, at which neither meat nor spices formed part of the menu, but only fruits, nuts, and other products of sun-kissed foods. And that should tell you something about sun-kissed oranges. The conclusion of the rites was held at sunrise in the grove with a musical communion service, at which nectar of roses distilled from the 30,000 roses blooming each June upon the lawns at Beverly Hall was served as emblematic of the wine of the soul, and for this service the rose bushes were planted several years ago. This is also from the book, folks. I wish that all the readers of this book might have been present at the preparation, at the building, and at the dedication of this ancient magic circle. Or I wish that I might be able to give a detailed description of these sublime ceremonies in this book. However, I cannot do this here, though I hope that in some future work I will be able to do so. Sufficient be it to say that when the stone, made out of cement by one of the brothers, was nearly finished, the dedication took place, and the emblems placed in the stone itself before it was completed were the American Beauty Rose in full bloom. This as a representation or symbol of the soul that has reached full illumination. The mystic ring. This was a solid gold ring belonging to one of the members present, upon which had been engraved the cross and the pentagram. All members of the Magi will know what this symbol stands for. The ring itself, as is known to the Magi, is a protecting agent against all evil or malignant influences when worn during any ceremonial or developing work. And the true magic mirror. This is an emblem of the soul, which when fully developed will act as a mirror to the universe, wherein may be wisdom and truth. Lastly, a complete copy of the private textbook entitled, quote, Ritualistic Occultism, unquote, which contains the ceremonies as made use of by the Magi. And 4 of these ceremonials were made use of by 4 of the Magi in the dedication of the magic circle. When all of this had taken place, the stone was completed, and then later in the day the characters were engraved upon the stone by the brother who had completed the stone. Of the midnight feast to the gods, and of the morning services which took place in the grove, it is not lawful for me to speak at this time. But it is my sincere prayer that all who are enrolled in the sacred schools may someday be present with us and witness these sublime ceremonies, especially as they are conferred in the spring of the year. In the spring of the year. Arrangements were made by the delegates present, through voluntary contributions, to either buy another large grove, or if that is found impracticable, to build a much larger hall in the Grove of Osiris, so that advanced ceremonies may be held the coming spring at the 69th convocation of the Rose Cross Order. Now I'm going to reveal something to you that I have never told you before on this program. I've been working up to it, and now is the time to tell you before I read from the next section of this book. For then you will understand what has been happening in the last 50 years and what is happening now. It was Harry Truman, a 33rd degree Freemason, who signed the United Nations Treaty, who pushed through and signed the United Nations Participation Act. It was also Harry Truman, a 33rd degree Freemason, operating in concert with Wild Bill Donovan, the head of the OSS, a member of the Sovereign and Military Order of the Knights of Malta and of the Order of the Knights Templar, who created the National Security Act, pushed it through Congress. Harry Truman signed it. It created the umbrella of national security, a curtain of secrecy. It created the Central Intelligence Agency, and behind this curtain of secrecy, the secret societies have been working to destroy the sovereignty of all nations and bring about a one-world totalitarian socialist government. And folks, All of the bugaboo enemies that you've been afraid of all your life were never enemies at all. For these were deceptions, manipulations. The only enemy, folks, that the people of the world have ever had is right here in this country, down at the corner in your town, in the temple that has no windows. And now, reading again from the book, the report from the 68th Convocation of the Order of the Rose Cross. Introduction to the Great Seal. It is rather a strange and an unknown thing for one to write an introduction to a single chapter appearing in a book, but the conditions are so unusual as to warrant it. More than a year ago, Grace K. Morey, the author of the article, The Great Seal of the United States and Its Mystic Significance, prepared a sketch for a short primer of the Illuminati teachings. And in this sketch, as will be shown by the drawings, it was brought out that man is not only a threefold being, but that he is actually a fourfold being as well. In short, that when he has succeeded in reaching soul illumination, he is the completed pyramid or true triangle. If the student will give serious study to the article on the seal of the United States, he will find that on the reverse side of the seal, which is as yet uncut, there is to be found the pyramid, but with the capstone as yet not placed, and thus he will see that the philosophy of the Illuminati is the absolute and undeniable philosophy upon which these United States are founded, as is clearly indicated by our fourfold philosophy, by the drawings representing our philosophy, and by the drawings of the reverse side of the United States seal. And thus it would appear that the unseen hierarchies which shaped the foundation of the great republic which must some day rule the world are the same hierarchies which gave us the soul science philosophy as taught by the Illuminati. And now you know why what has happened in this country has happened, and you now know why what is happening today is happening, and you now know why on the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States are the words Novus Ordo Seclorum, which literally translated means the new order of the ages, also known, ladies and gentlemen, as the New World Order. But I won't let you rest with that shock. Listen to this, dear listeners. Hold on to your chairs, because the incredible admission that is coming to you right out of the pages of this book is going to knock you flat. Reading again from the book. And thus it would appear that the unseen hierarchies which shape the foundation of the great republic which must someday rule the world are the same hierarchies which gave us the soul science philosophy as taught by the Illuminati. And now let us look into the future, not far, but just beyond the line. We find that scholars condemn the design of the reverse side of the United States seal, that it has never been cut, but has remained hidden as though it were something to be ashamed of. However, though this appears the truth, it is not the truth. The reason why it has never been cut is because the time is not yet, as the capstone has not yet been set. And what is this capstone? My reader, prepare for a shock. When Atlantis ruled the world, that which is now America was connected with Egypt by what is now Mexico, and in Mexico and the territory of Yucatan there is a pyramid in which the fire philosophers worshipped God as divine fire and life in like manner as did the initiates of Egypt, for the two were then one. America is not complete, and will not be complete, cannot be complete, until Mexico is again part of America as she was in the long ago. And when Mexico is once again a part of the United States, then will the capstone have been set on the pyramid, and the reverse side of the United States seal will be cut. Thus you will see that the Soul Science Primer with its drawings is but the beginning of the article concerning the seal of the United States, while the article on body, mind, spirit, and soul is the final thereof. May it not be long until the Holy Pyramid shall be completed, and may it be completed without the shedding of blood. Lovingly given, R. Swinburne Clymer, Beverly Hall, Quakertown, Pennsylvania, July 6th, 1916. And now you know the final truth, ladies and gentlemen. Now you know the purpose of the free trade agreements. Now you know the purpose of GATT and NAFTA. Now you know where we're headed. Now you know that the middle class in this country is doomed. Now you know that the New World Order is being brought about by the intelligence community and the secret societies whose headquarters are in the United States of America, just 13 blocks from the White House. Now you know, in the incredible admissions in their own writing in this book published by the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, now you know that the Illuminati is real, that Freemasonry is a part of the Illuminati, that the Rose and Cross is a part of the Illuminati, that they are also called the Order, the Brotherhood, that they also consist of the Knights Templars, they also consist of the Knights of Malta, and all of the other secret societies whose organizational structure is in the shape of a pyramid, with a few at the top who really know what the great work and the great plan is, and a whole bunch of slathering idiots thirsting after the secrets on the bottom who will never, ever know anything. Are the cockroaches scattering? If this broadcast doesn't do it, nothing will. If this doesn't wake you up, ladies and gentlemen, nothing will. If you don't understand now the 18 hours of the series that I've aired on the mystery schools, you will never understand it now or in the future. If you don't know where we're headed now, then you never will. If you are not concerned now, then you have already placed the chains upon your ankles and you have already watched freedom fly. If this broadcast does not do it, nothing will. This is the last voice of freedom. This is the only revelatory media source in the world today. The hour of the time is the only outlet for truth left upon this earth. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have heard tonight is the final parting of the curtain. It is the opening of the last door that was to be opened. It is the final understanding of where we have been, where we are at, and where we are going. It is the light. It is the illumination in the darkest corners. You are looking at the forbidden fruit. You have heard tonight what you were never to hear, what has been forbidden for thousands of years. You now know what the great work is. You now know who is bringing it about. You too can find this book if you search hard enough in the incredible admissions that are contained within it. Will give you the ammunition and the armor to march out here on the battlefield with me and many others who are trying to stop what is coming. Remember what Mr. Swinburne said at the end of his article, and I'll read that to you again. May it not be long until the Holy Pyramid shall be completed, and may it be completed without the shedding of blood. Lovingly given, R. Swinburne Clymer, Beverly Hall, Quakertown, Pennsylvania, July 6th, 1916. And I am telling you now, their goal is to destroy all other religions save theirs, destroy all existing nation states save theirs, and shackle the mob, and that is you. Good night.